Hello, hello. Welcome back to the Story Darlings podcast. I'm Sandra.
And I'm Tera.
What are we talking about today, Tera?
So we are talking about part 2 of Tower of Dawn, and I discovered this last time. I like Sandra's version of this book a lot better, which is not behind her head for the first time ever. But like the new book cover on this one is so much better. It's got the tower. This one's just like a little owl. Like I mean, not that that's bad. It has like very meaningful value in the book, but it's just, I don't know, it reminds me of the Guardians movie with the little owl, like, warriors or whatever. Yeah. So anyway.
This is gonna sound so bad. I never realized it was an owl on the cover. For some reason, I assumed it was what was Chaol's on his his sword pommel?
I don't remember.
It's like a falcon or something. I'm like, oh yeah, it's the Chaol book, so it's just like Chaol's Captain of the Guard symbol. Nope, not very astute observation, Sandra.
Yeah, and like I would say that this is somebody else's book. I mean, Chaol is a big part of the book, but I think that this is like a book dedicated to somebody else.
Interesting. Hold that thought. So I have to quickly plug our previous videos. So last week we talked about part 1, which is called The God City, which covers Yrene and Chaol's arrival in Antica. So if you missed that, definitely go back and check it out. We also have discussions for all of the previous books: The Assassin's Blade, Throne of Glass, Crown of Midnight, Heir of Fire, and is that it?
Storms?
Did we cover that?
Yes.
No, like, what timeline are we in? Yeah.
Okay.
Queen of Shadows and Empire of Storms. Yes.
Yeah, I was like, I feel like we just covered Empire of Storms.
It's all like, blurring together.
We've only got Kingdom of Ash left, guys. One book left.
Isn't that crazy?
I looked at the back of it and I'm like, yep, nope, I am right. We did read a Storms book.
It went so fast. Part 2 is called Mountains and Seas, which has a special meaning, which I love, and we'll talk more about that later.
I need to start reading what the part is called, because I didn't realize for a while that they had names in and of themselves. And Sandra keeps saying, oh, and this part's called, I'm like, did I miss something? Yes, it's a page in there. It tells you what it's called, guys.
The funny thing is, I don't think Throne of Glass was split into clean parts. I think she started doing that in the second book or so. So, yeah. But this book opens with Yrene and Sartak arriving in the Eridun Eyrie, and I'm probably going to butcher every single name or place in this book just because I'm not familiar with them as much as the other one. And we meet a few new characters of note. There is Borta. Is that her name? Or Borte?
I think it's Borte.
Borte, the Hearth sister. Her mother, the Hearth mother, I can't say her name either, Hulun.
Yes.
And then a mysterious merchant named Falcon Inar. And essentially, there's different plot lines going on. This one, they receive news that rook eggs have been disappearing and that the spiders in the southern continent have been active. And Yrene and Sartak are there to find out more about the Volg, why they might be in the southern continent, and to get the aerial army if they can. You want to add some color?
Yes. So I commented that the first half of this book was very, very slow. It was a lot of mental like things going on. The second half, however, there's a lot. There's a lot. Again, we're back to Sarah J Maas just like inundating you with like spoilers and Easter eggs. And one of those is who Falcon is. And there are 2 kind of Easter eggs where Falcon is concerned. But the first one comes up right after we meet him. And we find out that this is the man that was at a marketplace. And Selena Sardathian visited with him. And he gave her that little piece of spider silk. So this is the guy that we met. I don't remember what book, but in the past, I think it's Assassin's Blade. And he wanted to get his 20 years back from the spider that he sold him, the spider silk. And so that is his mission right now, is he is trying to track down the spiders so that he can kill one and hopefully get his 20 years back. And then I'm just gonna go out on a limb and say that Sartak may be, like, my second favorite person in these books because he is just so, like, adorable throughout this. I like him a lot. I like Adian a little bit better because he's a little sarcastic, but Sartak is really good too, so
Sartak is a prince, literally, but also figuratively. He is a prince. I One of my favorite parts was when they first arrived, and everyone knows the story of Neith's arrow because Sartak has been talking about Nesrin nonstop, apparently, and then promised them that she was going to be arriving there before even getting her okay that she was actually coming. And it was just like this cute little exchange between Sartak and Nesrin because there's like all of these little flames and flirtation going on between them, and he has such a crush on her. It's so cute.
he does, and later on in the book, he mentions that, and he's like I forgot what he said, but it was along the lines of, like, "From the moment I heard stories of you, like, I fell for you." And I'm like, "Oh, that's so cute." Like, he was hearing the stories of Neat's arrow and falling in love with her without ever meeting her.
Nesrin deserves that. There's a comment someone made later in this book. I can't remember who said it, but they basically said that Nesrin was his Chaol's kind of fallback girl, like
Mhm.
something to kind of salve his wound because of everything that happened between him and Aelin. And so she deserves this happiness, you know?
She does, and I know Sandra promised me that I would have better impressions of Kale after this book, and I do. I do. However, they're still not up there. Like, it's better, but I still have some very, very big qualms with Kale too.
That's fair. That's
So,
fair. You're allowed to not love him as much as I do. That's fair.
I mean, it's better. I don't want to murder him if I ever did meet him in public, but it's still not up there. I'm Yrene at the very beginning of this book with Kale right now. Still, like, it's he's growing on me, but have some concerns. So anyway, with Sartak and Nezrin, they find out a few things from Hulan, which includes that the Fae have been or were living in that area long ago, and that there are like these little like watchtowers that the Fae used to like use to kind of watch the spiders and to, you know, protect the land. And so Sartak and Nezrin are to go look in these watchtowers to see if there's any information about what's going on and why. And she also mentions that the spiders are Volg or Volg creatures of some sort. And so we get another sense of why the spiders are here and a little bit of an inkling of what's going on.
Nesrin and Sartak go off into the mountains to do a little investigating of their own. And so they get to the first Fey watchtower and they discover writings in the old language, the old Fey language, and they have no idea what it means. So they're in the process of jotting it down when they hear a voice say, "Look up." And that's what the translation had said. I think it was in blood. There was like blood smeared, like old, I don't know, some blood staining going on. And so they look up and there's this giant spider and a little scuffle ensues and they are saved by a wolf. And you want to talk a little bit about who this wolf is?
Yes, so it is a large gray wolf that pops out and saves them from the spider. And he then shifts back into Falcon. So Falcon is a shapeshifter, and much like Lysandra, he is gonna come in clutch a lot. At first, Sartak was a little bit of an ass to him though,
He
because he's like he
was.
has a very big bias against shapeshifters because he says that they are thieves and just all around bad people, spies, things like that. And so he has a bias against them. And he's not very nice to him, which makes me feel bad because Falcon just saved his life and he's being an ass. Like, chill, dude, chill.
Sartak's one and only mark against him
Mhm,
is just giving Falcon a hard time for saving him. It's kind of that prejudice that Lysandra had seen too.
mhm. Yeah. And I did make a comment because we have not seen too many shapeshifters around. And so I made a comment, and this is going to come up in the future, but I was like, is he related to Lysandra? Mm, mm, mm. And so I did write that down because I was like, wait a minute.
Yeah, learning that he was the merchant and then a shapeshifter, I was just like, ooh, 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 this has to have something to do with her.
Mm-hmm.
But yes. Falcon is badly injured from this, isn't he? Like they
Mm-hmm.
take him back, he's bleeding out on Kadara's back, and it takes them the better part of a week to heal him.
Yes, and the amount of sulking Sartak does because he has to take him back on Kadara is hilarious. He's acting like a little toddler not getting his way and like he's just sulking. And I think at one point Nezrin calls him out and she's like, if you don't stop it, I'm leaving with him. Like, we're done. And finally Sartak's like, fine, whatever.
Meanwhile, back in Antica, Yrene and Chaol are still doing their healing process. It's a daily thing for them. It's almost become ritualistic. And then Chaol is also helping train the healers and the other soldiers and that kind of thing. And they're trying to research the origin of these texts, I guess, that they had gotten from Nusha in the old library. And Nusha tells them that if they want to start at a place on the southern continent where they might find out more, that they should probably venture around the caves in the northern Oasis because there's a lot of ancient ruins and that kind of thing up there. So they start plotting a way to get up there, which kind of coincides with a special little event. What is it?
Yes. So it is about to be Irene's birthday, and these little cave areas happen to be right by a place called the Oasis, which is where the Coggin family goes to throw parties.
It's like the Hamptons for them or something.
Yes. And it is their property. So Irene's like, you know what? I could probably trick Hussar into throwing me a birthday party so that we can go up there and chill for a little while. And so she does. So Hussar throws a little party because I don't think anybody has to like convince Hussar to throw a party. I think she's down at all times. But she throws a party for Yrene, and Chaol comes with them. And at this point, Chaol and Yrene have gotten a little closer.
They've shared a few kisses, right? Up until
Yes.
this point. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And I love the whole scene of them traveling to the desert on horseback. And Chaol has been getting more and more movement in his legs. And he's on this little hell child of a horse called Farasha. That's the name of the horse. It's like this dark horse. It's a mare, very spirited. And they go horse racing, he and Yrene across the desert as they make their way to her birthday party, which is so not Yrene, by the way. Her only other option was Chaol was basically like, okay, well, you could just cozy up to Caution. I'm sure he would give you an invite. And she's just like, really? I'm not going to lead him on.
Before that, though, we see that Yrene and Chaol's healing sessions are going really, really well because there's a point in the book where they have a little tiff, and I forgot what the tiff was over, but they have a little tiff, and Yrene basically tricks him into walking because Chaol is pissed and Yrene is pissed, and Yrene keeps goading him and then backing away. And so Chaol, being the stubborn little jackass that he is like trying to get to her, and he starts walking. And Yrene figures out that this is a way to get him to walk, and she keeps backing up, goading him and backing up until she hits the wall.
What started all of this was the Coggin is finally out of mourning for the loss of the youngest daughter. And so he appears at dinner, and at dinner, they're talking about all of the politics and news that are coming from the northern continent. And someone lets loose that Chaol had a little fling with the Queen of Fire herself, Aelin. And they're teasing him like, oh, so she picked Dorian, huh? I think it's Hussar that's giving him shit about it, but Argan is also enjoying it. And so it's, Yrene sitting there at the dinner table next to Chaol, like, really? You had a romantic fling with the queen? And he's like, keeps kneeing her under the table, like, I'll explain it. And so emotions are kind of growing in that sense. And then he gets a letter that was it Nezrin and Sartak were staying like another 3 weeks. So he's very annoyed by that.
And then he also is this where he goes and meets with the Coggin and gets basically told, "Go
He,
away,"
he
because he tried to trick
crashed
the Coggin? Yeah.
he crashed the council meeting and was like, here's a trove of Aelin's treasures. We'll buy all of we'll double the order of fire lances that
Mhm.
Rolf was ordering on behalf of Aelin. And the Coggin ain't having that. He basically has Shen, his guard,
Throw him out.
wheelchair Chaol out of there. And it's just a very, I don't want to say emasculating kind of scene for Chaol, but it definitely hit him really, really hard. And he was grumpy about it. So then when they're in the room and he's just not being very pleasant around Yrene, she decides to bring up the whole, oh, okay, so you and Aelin. And then they just exchange some pretty mean words too.
Mhm.
Like, I forget what he said exactly to Yrene, but I was just like, really, Chaol, you're gonna say that to her? But she took it in stride though. She
And
got him back.
that's where I have a hard time with Kale still. Like, at every
But
turn, he gets a little bit emasculated and he throws barbs, just like he did with Aelin. Like, it didn't go his way. He told her she was worthless and that all these deaths are her fault and blah, blah, blah. And it's like he hits the hardest that he can possibly hit any chance he gets.
for sure. I think what I like about his character is he's so flawed. I think out of all of the characters, he's probably the one where his vices and his insecurities just show up even stronger than other people. And I don't know. I've really appreciated that because he does have redeeming moments, but he is far from perfect. Like he knows what to say to get under your skin and hurt you, which I'm guilty of doing this. I have said very hurtful things to people and I regret them very deeply, but I'm, yeah.
I have a question for you, and this is very, very serious.
Oh,
Does
great.
do Hussar and Argus remind you of anybody? That they're like shit stirring and they're partying and
Oh,
they're
yeah.
like,
Can I say like my own family, like my own sister?
oh, I was going somewhere else because your sister doesn't do it in a funny way. Whereas I find Argus and Hussar in a little bit of a jesting way, especially at the dinner with Hussar, like, haha, you know? I feel like Argan is a little bit more serious about it. So he might be more like your sister, but like Hussar, I feel like she's just doing it because she's bored and she wants like attention.
Yeah. Her is it her wife, Renya?
Hmm.
Such a patient woman. Such a
Yes.
patient woman. In the desert when they went up for Irene's birthday and they were just the conversation was getting very stiff and serious. And then Hussar makes a comment about Chaol's disability, essentially. And Yrene got so offended and insulted on Chaol's behalf and shoves her into the pool. And they're just like, oh my fucking God, she is about to die. And then Renya just speaks up with a comment to lighten the load and
And
kind of
then
diffuses.
Caution steps in too and starts laughing and like diffuses it too. Oh
Yeah. Love that scene. Do we want to talk more about the birthday party and what goes on? Because there are a few things. There's some really fun things that happen at the end of it, but they do find out. Good for
my.
Chaol.
Some spicy things, in other words,
Spicy.
guys.
But they do go into the caves and they find out there's like drawings of the Vogue and the old Fae. And they do learn, they get the sense that the ancient Fae, who no one really knows how they got there, but they had settled this land first, and that's what all of these ruins are and that kind of thing. So they do like find out a little more evidence of that. But the little birthday party in the desert is a very special time for Yrene because Chaol, love him or hate him, when he cares about someone, he does go all the way for them, kind of like he does for Dorian ever since they were children. And so he gets Yrene a birthday present, and it is a beautiful little locket. And you want to talk about the locket?
Yeah, so he got her a locket. It has her little initials on it, and he got her the locket because he noticed that there is something that she keeps like transferring to each outfit that she wears, and it's in her pocket at all times, and she messes with it. And at first I was like, wait, is she carrying a word stone? Is she messing with a word stone? But it's not that. I was wrong, guys. Um, and we find out later that it's a little piece of paper that was written for her that says, basically to get you to the Torre Chesme and then some. And it's the letter that Selena Sardathian left for her with the gold. And, it's just that little piece of I'm worth it note for Yrene. And so he said that she can keep it in the locket so that she can, keep it safe. And it was very, very sweet. I will admit this is a moment that I was like, okay, I can see why Sandra's saying that like it redeems him, but then he does something stupid and it doesn't redeem him.
Oh, I think he's more than made up for it. Okay, the mountains and seas, isn't that etched into the locket as well? And Chaol tells her it represents the mountains that you climbed by
Mhm.
herself when she was younger to get to Inish in the first place, and then the seas that she crossed to get to Torre Chesme. And that's when she was like, well, I didn't do it by myself. I had a little bit of help. And she divulges this story about the mysterious girl or woman or whoever she was in
Or
Inish that
God.
helped her. And yeah, there's so much God talk and things like that. But you mentioned you thought it was a word stone. I was like, is it the ruby? Does she still have the ruby? I thought it was the ruby the whole time, but I
Well,
guess
and
she
she
pawned
does
it off.
still have the
Oh,
ruby
she does?
because it says multiple times that that was the one thing that she would not get rid of is the ruby from that treasure, that brooch. And she even tells Chaol that she kept the ruby brooch, which I thought at that point he was going to catch on
Yeah.
as to who gave her, but he didn't. But there's also another very, very sweet moment after where he tells her that he does not love Aelin or Nezrin, which opens up to, well, who do you love, Chaol? Who do you love?
Who do you love?
And then we do have a spicy scene, so like we're clearly on the right track of who he loves.
We learn Irene is not a virgin, that she had a less than spectacular encounter with some rando, I think. And
I think
oh,
it's right around the time that Caution told her that he loved her too, because it was like a year ago, and I think Caution had just told her, and so I'm like, was that your way of like getting rid of Caution?
yeah, that's a good yeah, that kind of tracks with something old Sandra would have done a long time
Yes.
ago.
And then we get a note of like Chaol's feelings after, where he said he would always be grateful for the woman that helped Yrene get to the Torre Chesme and kept her safe, basically by teaching her how to use
Gracie Lou
defense. And
Freebush.
yes, to Gracie Lou Freebush. And I love that because me knowing who this person is, I'm like, ha 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 ha
Mm-hmm. It's fun to get to
ha.
giggle internally.
I'm like, I know who that was. So we see that Chaol's room is trashed when they get back. And in the ransacking, they took all of the documents that Yrene had brought over to Chaol's room, except for the one that they hid in his boot. And so Yrene takes that back to the Torre Chesme and goes to Hafiza and kind of informs her what just happened. And Hafiza lets her know that there are more documents in the Torah Chesme, and some of those are locked up in a locked cabinet that has been passed down that no human's eyes should ever see it. And the only person that has the key is the healer on high. And so we see that, but I'm going to draw back to Chaol being kind of a douchebag. So he and Yrene had like this moment, all kinds of love, right? And then he's back in his room kind of second guessing that, and he's like, I don't like, he's feeling bad because he didn't end it with Nezrin first, which I thought it was kind of an end when she told you, like, I'm not holding you to this and I'm not gonna hold to it. Like, is that not an end? Like, come on, dude, like,
I
stop.
don't know. If I'm anything like Kale, I need things spelled out for me, I guess, like a closure type of thing. So I mean, I get it. I get both sides.
I get it, but after the fact, don't feel bad because you're just like tainting the new relationship too.
True. He just has so much internalized guilt and shame. He really does.
He does. And it's annoying me. It's
Tara,
annoying me.
he's human. Yeah.
Um, and then he like then goes into a moment of like, well, even Aelin like waited with Rowan until she got back and ended it with me and like bashing Aelin. There's a part where he's just like, she's horrible kind of a thing. And I'm like, wait until you find out that she's the one who saved like multiple times you and Dorian. So like chill on the Aelin hate. I don't know. His moments. I'm just like, your way of thinking about this seems very, very screwed up. If you were gonna feel bad about it, like feel bad before it happened. Because at this point, like all you're doing is being disrespectful to Yrene, in my opinion.
I can see that. It's interesting that you look at it that way with the Aelin part because in my eyes, it's almost like he places Aelin on this pedestal. And because Aelin was able to say, no, I'm not starting anything with Rowan because da 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 da, he's like trying to hold himself to her standard or bar, which is just so unrealistic. He's just the type of person that uses whoever is around him, like in a position of influence, as his moral compass, which can be very troubling, as we saw with the King of Otterland. But he does it with Dorian, he does it with Aelin.
He does a lot of comparison. And there's a quote that's comparison is like the I don't remember what the quote is, but like comparison is the like something of joy, thief of joy or something.
Yes, yes.
Because every time you compare yourself to somebody else, like you're either not gonna like live up to it or you're gonna try and just take away all the things that you find enjoyable. Enjoyable? That's not a word. Um, that you enjoy. So I think he has a lot of the comparison. Like
Mhm.
I also think it goes back to his childhood. Like he doesn't ever feel like he's good enough.
Yeah, for sure.
And maybe that's why I'm hard on him because I do see a lot of myself in him too. Like
Mhm.
and so I'm like, "Oh, don't be like that because I know why you're being like that, but don't be like that because it's not fair to everybody around you." And
Yeah.
so that one I didn't like that. I didn't like how he was reacting to it. I can see if he was reacting before, but like after I feel like that was just like a kick to Yrene. And I'm like, please don't do that. Please don't go backwards. You're moving forwards. Don't go backwards.
I mean, he does have his way of showing Yrene that he cares, like the conversation that he was having with the siblings at the dinner table, and they're talking about what transpired. Aelin appeared in Skulls Bay, and he's just like, literally what we talked about the last episode. Like, I just named a place that she would never show up. And lo and behold, that's where Aelin appears. And there's this epic sea battle that happens, and she obliterates every ship with her firepower. And he's talking to the siblings, trying to assure them that Aelin is doing everything for the right reasons. She's trying to fight the evil that's come to their world. And they make him swear, okay, put it on Irene's life if that's what you really believe. And he's not willing to swear
Mm-hmm.
it on Irene's life just for like even the tiniest hint of doubt that he would have about Aelin's intentions. He's not
Motives.
willing to do that for Yrene. Yeah. So that
Yes.
it's like a very Chaol thing to do.
So back with Nezrin and Sartak, who I love. So back on the side of this book that I'm liking right now, um, we see them discuss Borte's mother's death. And Sartek feels a little bit guilty about that because it was in battle with him that she died. And so we hear the story, and that's very, very touching. And then we also hear that Hulan knew Falcon was a shapeshifter and that she had all of the history, which is kind of like I don't know if it's like a punch in the stomach for Sartak, but she was keeping a secret from him and she didn't tell him. And so he feels kind of like not betrayed because that might be a little strong, but he feels let down maybe by that. And then we hear a little bit more about the hatchlings and that they might know a place where they are because Hulan just got back from like a sightseeing mission of trying to figure out where they were. And so she's like, I think that they're here because spiders are kind of getting together here. And so Nezrin, Sartak, Hulan, and Falcon are sent to go. And Borte is told to stay home because she is the heir. And if something happens, then they have nobody because her mother is dead. And so they also mentioned that it would be better if only a small group goes because it's not as visible as
Mhm.
if a large group goes. So they'll have a little bit of the surprise. So they all go, and Sartak and Nezrin kind of, they divide up. And Sartak, Nezrin, and Falcon, who is in her pocket as like a rat or a mouse or something at this time, and they go their little separate ways. And Sartak gets caught in a web. And there's a moment where I was very scared for him. Very scared.
It was a scary scene. This was the one where it was a baby rook trap, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which was so sad. It was probably the saddest part of this whole damn book to me was the baby rook because it was squawking and flailing caught in a web or something. And Kadara is freaking out and wants to go save this baby bird. And so they do swoop down, but they get caught in the web. Sartak is injured in this big fall. And then the spiders freaking come out, and one just like impales the baby bird and drags it off around the corner. Like its little cry is cut off. And I was just like, oh,
I was intentionally leaving that part out, guys.
I was like mentally scarred by this. And yes, and
Yes.
then Sartak is caught between the stones and is ripped away. But Nezrin is not having any of that, is she?
No. And so Sartak took the brunt of the fall. Like he flipped her over to where he would take it. So he is heavily injured. And then he basically like just kind of gives himself up and tells Nezrin to escape and he'll stay back and like try and help her, right? And so again, oh,
At this
like
point, Tara's like, no, I like him.
I was like, I can't read anymore. I can't read anymore if he dies. Like, I just can't because that was the sweetest thing he could have done is to help her get free. And he hasn't even told her how he feels. But he survives, guys. He's hurt. He's hurt very badly. But Nezrin's like, no, not going to happen. I am not letting that happen. So Nezrin goes back and she gets him free. And she has a little bit of help, though, because she goes back and Falcon is like trying to like chew the little webs off of everybody and like free them. Then he changes into a spider and basically tells all of them that there's a huge group of rook riders coming. You better go protect. I'll stay here with these guys and make sure they don't escape, but like go. And so the rest of the spiders get out and he is left there and he's like, hey, it's me, guys. And he frees them. And they, are running out, and then Borte shows up with her fiance, who is like, that relationship is just hilarious because the fiance wants to marry her, and she's like, I don't like you.
Yeah, she is so mean. They're mean to each other. It's so funny.
It is. It cracked me up a little bit. And she's there with her fiance, and she was like, basically, I told him that I was coming and he could either let me go die or he could help me. And I'm like, you go, girl. You go, girl. So they come and like everybody's safe.
That was an important scene for a couple reasons. It's while they're imprisoned, still have the bindings on them, the web bindings and stuff. They hear the spiders talking about the history of the Volg and how they came to this world. And so we find out bitch Queen Maeve is actually a Volg fucking queen who married the oldest of the Volg kings, Orcus, who apparently is locked away on the other side of the word gate, but that she has been running from the three kings, including Erewhon, as she discovers new worlds and tries to, in her own way, like expand Volg Empire, I guess. And so we find out about that. We find out that there was no third Fae sister, that she infiltrated everyone's minds at that court, all of the people, and had them believe that she was the third sister queen. So we learn that, and we learn because Falcon basically sacrifices himself as a spider and makes Nezran promise something if he
Yes.
doesn't make it out. And what is that?
He makes Nezran promise him that she will look and give like all of his money or whatever to his niece who his brother had, but his brother didn't know the woman very well who he had
They
the
sounded
kid
like two
with.
deadbeat parents. Yeah.
Yes. And so Falcon had went to the mother, and the mother had told him that she had kicked the daughter out, and she didn't know where she was. And then she died.
Didn't give him a name. Yeah.
Yep. He had a brief description of the little girl, though. But we also find out a couple other things to do with Maeve. So Maeve was married to the oldest Bog king, and she is a queen, which I got the impression isn't too like common. Like 'cause she was powerful, and the women I didn't get the sense were very powerful most of the times. So everybody wanted the Vogue queen, like all three of the brothers, and she chose the oldest, right? And so she also told the spiders to stay there in case anybody came back through the gate that was there. And so we find out that there might be some sort of portal to the Bog nation there, or Bog world. But then we also hear an answer to a question Yrene had, which is where are the other two and what happened to them? How did, like, where are they? And it was that Maeve kicked them out and sent them back.
Before Brandon took the key.
Yeah. So then we do know that they are on the other side of the portal. They're not waiting to like help their brother or anything. So at least we're only dealing with one Bald King at the moment and now a queen.
Which she seems like the baddest of them all, though. I mean, she's made it this far.
And then, so to kill all of the spiders, we see a bunch of arrows going with fire. And poor little Sartak is just cutting off his hair to catch it on fire to send it. So he's getting a haircut in the process. But that is how they like end up escaping all of the little spiders, is they catch them all on fire because we know that they hate fire, the one thing that they can't abide.
Yeah.
So I found it amusing that Sartak got a little haircut.
The whole scene, you're just like, oh no. So not only does Aelin have to fight the bad Iron Teeth witches, you know, apart from the 13 that have joined her cause, she has this armada. She has all of these, you know, silent assassins, all these people on her side. But there's a freaking Vol King. There's a Vol Queen. There's who knows how many of these Stygian spiders, which are the handmaidens of the Vol Queen. And there could be more portals because they mentioned there are several rips or tears in different places. So there could be something like that. It's just the magnitude of everything Aelin is going to have to accomplish, even with all of her allies, it just feels a little bit daunting, which makes their need for an ally with Antica and all of that much more important.
Even greater.
Mm-hmm.
But on a positive note, Sartak tells Nezran that he loves her.
Yes.
Which is, yeah.
He's a good
As Sandra
one.
said, Nezran deserves it. And I love the fact that Sartak tells her.
You've seen Game of Thrones, right?
I've seen an episode of Game of Thrones.
Okay, have you seen the pictures of Daenerys when she's with the Dothraki warriors, the
Mhm.
horse warriors? This continent and like the aerial out cavalry
Mhm.
and the horse warriors and stuff that they're trying to
Of
ally with, it
caution.
reminds me of that very much.
Mhm.
I kind of picture Sartak like that, but with a little funniness to him.
So, back to Chaol and
Yrene.
Yrene, we find out a little bit from some scrolls and from Chaol's memory, which is that the owl, which is sacred to
Silba.
Silba, I spelled that wrong. So,
Sibla.
yeah, I was like, wait a minute, that's not what it's supposed to say. Silba has popped up in the past, and it's popped up on what's it called? The little tapestry, that's what it's called. A little tapestry that was important in Aylin's journey from the very beginning. And basically, we find out that Silba is responsible for the ring that cannot be like mind controlled or whatever by the Volg. The ring that we
Killed.
thought,
This is the ring
yeah,
that was protecting Chaol when he was
yes.
mortally wounded.
And we thought it was made for Athros by Mala, which is so Athros is the one that Maeve was supposedly in love with, right? And Mala was her sister, I guess, something.
I
I
can't
don't
keep the god
remember.
stuff straight.
Anyway, so we thought it was made by Mala, and actually it was made by Silba, and Athros was her kind of person.
We also learn because Irene comes to her own little epiphany in a way. It's after she's talked with Hafiza, she goes to do some thinking and pondering in the womb, which is kind of like a steam, like hot springs baths in the caverns. And so she's down there, and isn't it kind of like a divine intervention type of scene where she hears like the bells ringing? And so
Mhm.
she follows where the bells are, and she finds an ancestor of hers from 250 years before named Yaffa Towers, like sees that name written there. And she's just like, oh, like this can't be anything but a sort of divine intervention. Like she is on the path that she was destined to be, kind of thing. Which also, she comes to the realization that the Volg are like parasites, and she has figured out a way that she can cure Kale.
Or at least she thinks she
Hmm.
can.
Which she actually does,
She
but she
does.
gets
Mhm.
poor, poor Kale.
So she actually figures out a way that she could do it with Kale, but there was special circumstances because she was in love with Kale, and she's like, I can try on you because special circumstances. But she thinks she can do it on others too.
Hmm.
And so she goes back up to speak with Hafiza and realizes Hafiza is missing. Poor Hafiza. And so they go and look for Hafiza. And who is holding her?
Some crazy pregnant bitch.
So the
Oh.
Volg, who has been, in the Coggins territory, is actually Duva. Poor, poor Duva. And I kind of called it when I said, like, Duva's the one who saw the little sister die. And it was because little sister was catching on that Duva wasn't acting normal. And so the Volg in Duva pushed her. And just like Dorian did, Duva fought back. And she was not happy with the fact that the Volg inside of her just killed her little sister. So it's so sad for Duva.
So this epic little scuffle takes place, and Duva is kicking their ass. Hafiza's like knocked over. Kale uses a mirror to deflect something, which knocks Duva over at some point and just knocks her out completely. But she's faking it. And she blasts, like sends out a blast of power at, is it Yrene? And Kale is just like, no, 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 like not letting this happen. Jumps in front of Yrene and it fucking hits his spine again. And this man is going to die, but it isn't until all of the healers come and do like a I don't even know how you
Like
would
a
describe
group,
this scene. Yeah,
a
it's like
group
a
healing
they're
with
just
all
like
of the
hand to
ancestors too.
shoulder.
Like
Mhm.
the ancestors are there. And so, yeah, they do a group healing, but Kale's too far gone for this. So then they have to, like, I think it was Silva came in and she's like, okay, so there's going to be a price to this. And Irene's like, I'll pay it. Like, just help. And so Kale does get healed, and Irene has the price to pay for it. I think it was like a fair price. Like, I don't think it was like too crazy.
No. So Chaol is still going to be, using a cane or a wheelchair, just depending on how Irene's power levels are, because they're essentially sharing like a source of energy, I guess, if you want to put it that way. And so if Yrene is flagging, Chaol is going to be flagging. So
Mhm.
he is not completely independent and standing on his own. He very much depends on her. And it's a life bond. So it's kind of like the notebook. So if one of them dies, they both die. So in this battle that is coming, you better hope that everyone stays
Stay
clear of all
safe.
this shit or else everyone is dying. So,
Yes. But we also hear what makes Irene special, and that is that she is Silba's heir. And that is why the Vogue are theirs. They were told, or they had a foretelling or something. They knew in some way that Silba's heir was going to come, and that was the person that could basically heal Vogue and get rid of them. And so they had been kind of waiting. They heard that she came to the Tory Chesme, and so they were waiting for her to like do something to prove that she was Silva's heir, and then they were going to kidnap her basically and take her back so that they could use her for their own.
because Maeve has already been accruing a bunch of healers of her own
Hmm.
back in, what is it,
Yeah.
Wendlin or wherever she is. So she definitely has a plan for all of the healers. And all of this god stuff though. So like Nezrin with Neith and Aelin with Mala Firebringer. And then you have Silva with Irene. You have all of these parallels with these gods, and they keep talking about how no one knows where these ancient fae came from, where all of these ruins and stuff that they find. It just makes me wonder if the gods are like actually the first fae entities or something. This is something that I've been thinking about.
Well, and the gods have been leading everybody to where they are. So the healers that are at the Tory Chesme, it said that the Fae bred the healing powers into the people there. So, like, they are descendants of those Fae. And what I could figure out. And that's how they have the healing powers, is that the Fae passed them down. And then Irene being Irene, she tested out her little hypothesis and healed Duva. So Duva is now Duva again. And all of the little Coggan's children and the Coggan himself are very, very thankful for the fact that she not only saved his daughter, but like got her back.
That was the first time I saw Hussar genuinely nice and happy
Hmm.
to everyone. Just so excited to have her sister back and to have figured out what happened with the youngest, that she really did not commit suicide, that this had happened to her. So they do win over everyone and get them on their side.
And I appreciated, because this whole book is kind of dealing in the fact that there's only one Coggan and the other children are kind of left out and, might be put to death, might be sterilized, might be whatever their children killed. And at this moment, they're all together except for Argon, who's like, well, like, really? Should you? Like, dude, shut the hell
There
up.
has to be one sibling.
But so they're all together and they say, never Duva. Duva was the best of us. And so it pulls them together in like a tight knit bond to where they're not going to kill Duva. They're not going to kill Duva's little baby, whoever gets picked for the Coggan, which is nice to see. Like they're all going to be able to have their own space.
Yeah.
And then we go, and Nezrin comes home and she meets with Kael, and she's happy for Kael, and Kael's happy for her. So
Yeah.
that's a good little meeting. And then she goes and she finds her dad and her sister and her nieces and nephews at her uncle's house, and Sartak comes in. And it's so cute, guys, because the whole, like, street is like, "Oh, Katara, Katara!" And then they notice that the prince is there, and her aunt is like, "I told you, I told you." And he is there to basically tell Nezran that he got selected for heir after telling his dad that he was gonna be with Nezran, and if he like, his dad didn't want him to be, then, like, too bad, so sad, and his dad's like, "Fine, be heir." And so he basically proposes to Nezran.
I'm so glad that Nezrin gets to be a princess or royalty because ever since she set foot in the southern continent and it has felt like her home, she is overwhelmed by all these feelings, her history, her family's legacy, and her stories keep preceding her everywhere she goes. And so she's already beloved in that sense and celebrated. You know, it's kind of like
Yes.
Yrene. When Irene's going about town, everyone's like, oh my God, she's like a celebrity. It's like, oh my God, it's the heir to the high healer. The date scene with Chaol was like one of my favorite scenes when they first went to dinner. They were so cute and shy about like going to dinner together. And they're just like being kind of touching fingers and stuff. It's very innocent.
I thought it was kinda cute when Nezran's dad came out and Sartak is standing there, and he, like, tries to bow to him, and he's like, "No, no, it's fine, it's fine." And
Stand
then
away.
Nezran does when when he tells her that he's the heir, and he's like, "Never from you." I'm like, "Oh."
They're so cute. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And the end scene, probably my favorite scene because it finally gave so much closure for me when it came to Chaol. It hit me in the feels because everyone has been through so much. Yrene had been through so much until Selena kind of swaggered into her life, you know, a few years back. And you want to describe what that scene's like because they're standing on the ship getting ready to go back to the north.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
So they are selling to the north, and there is a funny little part where Kale mentions that he's been vomiting, and he's like, "But at least I have a healer to like help my upset stomach." And man, I wished I had a healer like a week ago because my stomach was like not nice to me. But so he did that, and then it's mentioned that they got married before they left. And so Irene is now the Lady of Westfall, and so that's cute. And then she finally lets him, like, see the note that she's been carrying, and he recognizes the handwriting. And he kind of just starts, like, tearing up and crying, and, like, his emotions are hitting him because he finally knows who helped save her, and it was the woman that
Won
he's
his
been
heart.
in love with and then, like, angry at and then okay with and then angry at, and then, like, all the feels are hitting him. And he recognized it, and Irene's like, "Why are you crying? Like, it's not that big of a deal, dude." And he's like, "I'll tell you. I'll tell you about why I'm crying." And so that is super, super cute. And then it doesn't go into the fact that he tells her, but he's like, "I'll tell you over dinner." And
Mhm.
he's like, "But it's a long story." And she's like, "Those are the best."
Mhm. It was the perfect way to end Tower of Dawn because it was a parallel to exactly what happened at the end of Empire of Storms, where this off-scene wedding happened between Aelin and Rowan, and then it's Chaol and Yrene experiencing the same, except for this one had a little epilogue at the end, which is bad news and sad and disturbing.
Yes.
But yeah.
I do agree with Sandra. That last scene kicks up my happy feelings for Kale. Like if we'd ended on the scene where he was just like feeling bad about him and Irene getting together, I would not have had positive vibes for Kale still. Like more positive than before, but still like it's annoying how he reacts. But this last scene where he finally owned up to it and he saw that his happy could and is worthwhile. Yeah. I saw growth.
Yeah, one thing that Kale said that I thought would resonate with you deeply, Tara, because of a comments you had made in previous books, is you would liken the King of Otterland to Hitler a lot with the book
Mhm.
burning and rounding up people, executing them, all of this stuff. and Chaol being on the wrong side of history. And he's talking to, I think it's probably the siblings, and he's talking to and just fessing up like, I
Mhm.
was on the wrong side of this for a very long time. Don't make the same mistake I did, basically, and having that exact speech. And I was like, oh, if Tara's reading this part, she's definitely going to be like
Yeah.
clapping for him and happy that he's come to that realization.
Well, and he also mentions that it cost me everything.
Yes, it did.
Like, he even owned up to the fact that it's my fault that I lost everything. It's not Aylin's, it's not Dorian's, it's my fault. It's not my dad's, it's not the king's. I mean, even though it kind of is, but he made his choices
Yeah.
too, and he owns up to the fact that he made his choices. So
Mhm.
yes, I did appreciate that for him. But then he like makes these one-off comments and it just ruins it. I'm like, you had growth. Where did
he's
it go?
he's a human being. Yeah. But oh, now we move on to Kingdom of Ash, and the epilogue of this book is Aelin getting ready to be tortured by Cairn and Maeve. Right.
Mhm.
They just kind of
It's
take her out
in
of the
her
mask, take
little
her out of the tomb.
coffin, and it mentions that they had been like putting gas in there to keep her sedated and stuff. And then we did hear that, which is why Kale and everybody are going north. We heard that Aelin and her crew were going north. And that is the kind of intel that the Coggin had. And so we know that that is actually Lysandra and her crew going north, but to everybody else, that is Aelin. So I'm imagining like Yrene and Aelin getting together and Lysandra in Aelin's body, like, I don't know you. Like, who are you?
Uh
And
huh.
really throwing everything off and giving it away that she is not Aelin to the others. But we do hear that with Kale and Yrene, we've got Rook riders, we've got Hussar's army, and 1,000 ships from the Coggin and Hussar. And that Caution is rounding up his riders, and they will be going north too. So we have a huge army coming. And it's all thanks to Yrene, because when Yrene saved Duva, the Coggin said, name what you want. You can have anything, name it, it's yours. And she said, save my country, save my people. And so Yrene, again, is unknowingly passing back that life debt to
Hmm.
Aelin and getting her the help that she needs.
And Falcon is on this ship as well, right? Nezrine
Mm-hmm.
was all, he's a shifter. He's going to be very useful in this. And though he's not as powerful as Lysandra by any means, he will still have his use. Hmm.
Well, and Nezrin told him that she is fairly sure she knows his niece and that his niece is with Aelin. So like he knows that he is going back to the only family he has and will meet him. And Nezrin did point out the fact that the description he had does not look like what Lysandra looks like, but we already know that Lysandra changed her looks
And
and
doesn't
then
even
got stuck in that
remember.
body and
Yeah.
doesn't remember what she looked like.
It's going to be all kinds of reunions. We have one book left. All of this shit still has to be unwound, untangled, all of these reunions happening. It's going to be a crazy part. I think we have like 400 and something pages to read.
Yes. Each episode. I also think that there's going to be a bigger picture. Because as we've pointed out, these gods are involved, and I don't really know why.
Hmm.
Like so far, some of them are giving me good impressions, but some of them are not.
Yeah.
And so we don't know why. We don't know what's going on in like a larger scheme because basically what Aelin and her crew are chess pieces to these gods, and they've been like moving them around and putting them where they want them to be. And I think there's going to be a bigger issue there.
Lorcan was Hellas, the hell god too,
The
right?
god of
The
death
death.
or whatever.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And
We
then
don't know.
Elide and Aelin has Mala and Diana, which both seem like bitches at this.
Especially Mala. Hmm.
Uh-huh. Well, Diana is the one that like took over her body and like tried to burn up Bay's Skull's Bay.
Yes, turn it on
So
the
she seems
people.
like a bitch too.
It's going to be fun. So much to talk about next time. So we hope you enjoyed this episode, finishing up The Tower of Dawn by Sarah J Maas. Join us next week to discuss part 1 of Kingdom of Ash. Thank you so much for joining along on our Throne of Glass read-along. And any final words, Tara?
No, I'm just expecting a lot of notes. Like I'm not sure how we're gonna hit all of the high points or even medium points.
I know. I'm just, it's going to be a lot.
Oh, I'm
But
kind of scared.
anyway, yeah, it's going to be a good wrap up, I think. Hopefully you like it.
Yeah. I mean, so far I've liked it.
Anywho, if you enjoyed watching this episode of the Story Darlings podcast, feel free to give us a rating on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to podcasts, or YouTube if you subscribe there. So we will see you next week for Kingdom of Ash. Bye.